And we are back for series 2 of the Endless Spiral podcast. You are all very welcome. I am, as always, your host, Keith Russell. On this episode, I am joined by Louise Dunne, who is a good friend of mine. Louise is someone who I've always said is one of the most inspirational people I've ever met. Louise is an entrepreneur, and look, like everyone else, she's had her ups and her downs in business and in her personal life. So we're going to have a chat with Louise kind of about how she deals with her stresses and her anxieties and how she's found some coping mechanisms like swimming and stuff like that to kind of help her through the difficult times. So, Louise, you are very welcome. How does it feel to be the first guest on series 2 of the Endless Spiral podcast? You must be over the moon with yourself.
I can't believe it, actually, to be honest. Yeah.
You feel so honored.
I am really honored, actually. So thanks so much for having me. Like, it's definitely, I really like what you're doing, and it's a topic that I suppose we all need to talk a little bit more about. So I'm delighted to be here.
You're very welcome.
At home. Still kind of in lockdown. Yeah.
At home with all your filters on your screen. That actually took us about 2 hours to set up, but we're all ready to go now.
I don't have a filter. What are you talking
about? What filters? What filters? Yeah. So, Louise, I think maybe if you're okay with it, maybe we might take a little step back in time. And as I always mentioned in the intro, you are an entrepreneur. And look, I've been there beside you at times. I've witnessed you being pulled from pillar to post, and 1 minute you're dealing with the legal department, the next minute it's financials, and the next minute it's tech, and the next minute it's God knows what it is. I mean, like, that must be difficult for anybody. And I've always said, and I said this to you, like, I always say that you're kind of one of the most mentally strong people I've ever met. Like, I always say, I don't know how you deal with doing all of that. I mean, so, like, I mean, they say men aren't great at multitasking anyway, but I don't know how you do it. I mean, like, how are you now? I mean, or how did you cope with things back then to now? I mean, surely, like, you must get some kind of battle wounds along the way.
Yeah, you do. I mean, I suppose, like, from, my background, like, I started a business, at the end of 2014, and I ran that business, and it was in the beauty space and in technology. And, there was plenty of highs, which you would have seen as well as my friend. And, I'm an award-winning entrepreneur, and it was all of this stuff that was happening that was so exciting. And, you're being in the paper and you're raising money, and there's all of this amazing stuff that outwardly looks like it's phenomenal, and there's really exciting things happening, but sometimes on the inside that's often not the case. And definitely I went through some, well, first of all, running your business is full of highs and lows, on an emotional level, on a physical level. And any entrepreneur will tell you this as well, or anyone who's running their own business, you have to wear loads of hats. You don't just have one job. Your HR, your accounts, your, like, every single thing that's going on, sometimes legal, well, not quite, but you're everything that's going on in that business. So it makes you an amazing all-rounder on one hand. But then on the other hand, when actually things start not working out, and maybe you're running out of money, or the partnership that you did is not actually working, then you sort of realize, I actually don't even really know what I'm good at. And ultimately, like, it came to the decision for me, where it got to a stage where we had lots of great things happening in the business, and again, outside it looked fantastic, but inside we did some partnerships that just didn't go as well as we would have hoped. And then I with COVID and everything happening, then I made the decision to actually wind down. And in my entrepreneur gang and in my friends, people are like, oh, you could do this kind of job, or you could do this. And to be honest, I had a real identity crisis, because even though on one hand I was winning all these awards, and we were making money for one part of that company, the rest was really tough. And when you don't have that anymore, you have this silence. And I sort of struggled with, I don't really know what I'm going to do next, or I don't really know what I'm good at. And that internal battle of, I just tried to, I felt like when I was also really, really working like all of the time. I didn't have any time for myself. I didn't have any mental space. And ultimately that led to me being burnt out.
Yeah. And I completely forgot to mention in the intro that you were an award-winning entrepreneur. I completely forgot about that, But I mean, did you ever suffer from, stress or anxiety before you started your own business, or was it something that you kind of found that you kind of, the deeper you got into kind of setting up a business, the more stress that you kind of found?
Not really. I wouldn't have said that. I definitely no. Trying to think back now to when I was in school, I do remember like the teachers would have said, like, oh, she's a bit of a worrier, and things like this is when I was smaller. But I wouldn't have considered myself, and that's true. But I think that's just also personality. That's in my nature. I do think about like other people, and I think about scenarios, and probably the process driven person in me is actually probably the overthinker as well. So I suppose maybe I'd probably be a bit of a worrier, but I wouldn't have, I never really understood, what that anxiety piece was, or what that sort of, that nervous piece was. And kind of feeling overwhelmed by different things. So I suppose it didn't kind of come out of nowhere. It definitely would have been something that I, having ran the business and having experienced the experiences that I went through as an
Mm,
entrepreneur, like I think it was fairly normal because I was under stress.
yeah.
So, but really it was, I mean, I used to like lie in bed sometimes and I'd be just thinking, I'd be like, hey, well, the way people talk about, like, you can't see a way out. And like, for me, I was just always thinking about work. Like there was not, no, I didn't have any room for anything else in my life at the time.
Mm,
And looking back on that, I realized there was a huge opportunity cost for me as a person. That like I wasn't meeting anybody. I just was completely overwhelmed and consumed by everything that was going on with work, even when the business was open. But even, it takes a lot of strength and courage to open a business, but it also takes a lot of
mhm,
strength and courage to close it,
yeah.
and to make that decision as well, because you feel like you're attached to something.
Yeah.
Um, so there was that side too, but I definitely, it sort of took. I always say this as a joke. It only took a global pandemic, like, to kind of make me realize that that actually I needed to slow down. But
Yeah.
that was the truth, because that silence of just actually sitting in your house, being on your own, like all of that stuff just kind of gave me the time and space to actually figure out, okay, this isn't something that I need to continue. And actually finding better ways to manage myself, and
Yeah.
to manage your thoughts and all of those things, where, that it came out from the silence. But what I will say, and this wasn't really necessarily about you know anxiety or anything like that, but I did start with a therapist probably 10 years ago. And I think it's probably just because I love talking, to pay someone to talk to me. But I did start with a therapist 10 years ago. Now I didn't go consistently. I probably dipped in and dipped out over the years. But I found myself, when I was very overworked and very busy, I did not have time for that. And actually, that was the one thing that I should have had time for, because it's not that the therapist was going to be able to tell me what I could do with my business, but it was going to be able to give me the tools and the skills that I would be able to manage better in my day. And so I really, for me anyway, that's something that I know that works.
Yeah. Did you find at the time, you know, did you find that you probably realized you're stressful or you were stressed, but did you find that you were able to sit back and kind of reflect at the time, as because you said you didn't really have any headspace and you were kind of finding it hard to sleep. So as you said, it kind of took the pandemic, but before the pandemic, did you find any way to sit back sometimes and reflect and go, yeah, listen, this is too much for me. I need some headspace here.
No, not
No.
really. Honestly, I didn't. It took for, because what I did was that when I decided I needed time off, right? So that was definitely one piece. I was like, I just feel it's all gotten too overwhelmed for me. I feel like I've just, there's too much weight on different sections of all of this, everything on me. Like there was. you know, towards the end, it was just, there was constant like emails coming in every single minute of the day, phone was ringing, it just didn't stop. So whenever it did stop, I sort of wanted to just see friends and be busy and hang out. And, you know, I actually didn't really want to deal with, because I suppose at that stage, really, it's a good question, because I didn't really know what was next. It wasn't like I had to come to a decision, oh, I'm not doing this anymore. I said, I just need a bit of a break. And then actually I might be able to jump back in. You know, people always say, oh, if you're too busy, you're no good to anybody. But sure, when you're running your own business, like you are your own boss. You're responsible for everything else that's going on. So couldn't see that I wasn't actually any good to myself.
Yeah. And did you use any kind of coping mechanisms at that time? I mean, you have found some things now, but at that time, I mean, apart from the counselor, like, did you try anything yourself?
At then I didn't really know what exactly, like, people used to say to me all the time. And I think especially Irish, I don't know, it's an Irish thing, but people always say, look after yourself. Now you mind yourself. And I actually, that is something that it's taken me ages to understand actually what that means.
Yeah.
So, and it means something different to everybody. So I think the journey for me was, you know, closing a door, which allowed other ones to open, but also in this sort of self-care aspect of things, I didn't really know what it was to self-care. And I know that might sound so simple, but, you know, for some people it might be having a bubble bath, you know, and it is that sometimes, or getting into like, you know, clean pajamas and a nice fresh bed or whatever it is.
Yeah,
But
just
like,
taking time for yourself.
Time for yourself, but it's what, like, some people, what do you do with that time? Because am I just thinking about all the stuff I'm not supposed to be thinking about? You know, so I suppose understanding a bit more about self-care around that time actually was a real awakening for me. And realizing also, like, to practice self-care when you're not feeling the best is actually something that is so useful. But but it takes time to sort of figure out and understand maybe what those things are for you. And I know for me, like, every time I was feeling really good about myself, so if I looked back in the past, I was like, you know, Louise there, and she had a spring in her step. What was she doing there? And I probably was exercising. I probably was eating better. And it's all these things that actually you just forget. And I think the habits are so important to how your day is, you know. And you know, the amount of things that might be out there, books, YouTube, all of these things that will promote different things of self-care, but they might not always apply to you.
Yeah.
You know, because if someone says to you, go for a run, I'm like, well, I've never gone for, like, I've tried to go for a run.
Yeah.
And like, I might, but so if that's what I have to do, that seems very challenging, because I wasn't one of these girls in school that got to go to Santry. So, you know, to go, I was never picked for the run. But I loved swimming. But you know, it's things like that. So for, you know, people are always talking about how amazing running is, but, and I'm not ruling it out, actually, where I am currently in my life, I'm not ruling that out. But to start doing something like that, I was like, oh, I don't know how, like, I don't understand how that's going to make me feel better right now in my life. Now 6 months, you might interview me again and I might be running all around, but you know, it's about kind of figuring out that there's something that actually works for you. So one of the things that I found, which is my slow start to this, was walking. And I know you'll probably remember this as well, but I have earned myself the nickname of Taxi Lou. And that is because I would get a taxi everywhere. I had an account with various taxi companies in Dublin. Like, I was always getting a taxi everywhere. It was the amount of memes I get tagged in on a weekly basis because of, like, you know, for getting taxis everywhere and all of this. So when, you know, again, going back to that sort of stillness of being on my own during the pandemic, the next piece was, you know, actually just getting out and walking, because I love talking on the phone. I love voice notes. All of my friends are like, oh no, Louise is leaving a voice note. We know this is going to be a podcast. It's going to be at least 5 minutes. They're like, why don't you just ring me? So I found walking and talking to somebody on the phone, actually, I didn't realize how many steps I was doing. So this became a thing that I actually started to love.
Mm.
And every day I'd go out for a walk. I do the same route probably. And then when I learned to walk better, I actually got into walking more. It's like I only discovered this thing. Like I used to say to
Yeah.
people last year, I was like, the walking's great. And people are like, yeah, we know, like
Yeah.
we actually walk every week, Louise, every day.
Yeah. And you
So
became a wildlife photographer as well while you were out.
oh, stop! I know the nature pics. Oh yeah. So yeah, so walking, and then obviously moving into like a little bit more like hiking. I did a bit last year as well. That's not something that I don't love it as much. I find it challenging. I love being in nature, but I find it challenging actually to do a hike. But I've said before, like you can't enjoy it on the way up, but on the way down, it's like you feel, wow, you feel like this
Yeah.
is
Well, you've
amazing.
accomplished something on the way down, I suppose.
You've
Well, you've nearly
accomplished something.
accomplished it.
Yeah, and it's just like it's a great sense of achievement, but it's a
Yeah.
great sense of achievement when like when you kind of didn't do any of that stuff before.
Yeah.
For me, it would have been, just like going to the gym for like a half an hour, 3 times a week. That's kind of where it was my most exercise that I did.
Yeah.
Where now, I find like, I am walking every day, and I'm looking forward to, do like some home workouts. And then, and the latest thing that I've really discovered is this swimming. Like I am so, it's just so amazing for your soul,
Mm-hmm.
your mind and your body, and just like shocking yourself. It's total shock therapy. And I just think as well, for anybody who's going through anything, everything in your life is going to be worse than cold water. But when you jump into that cold water, that is the only thing that you can think about. So it's really good for practicing mindfulness, because that is the
Yeah.
only thing that you were thinking about in that moment
Yeah.
is actually, oh my God, this is freezing.
Yeah.
And and it is freezing, but then
Yeah.
you just adjust, and you're
Yeah.
looking at the sky, and you can go for a swim, and you never regret it. You never ever regret it. You might be a little bit cold, but you
Mm.
can cope
Yeah.
with the cold. We live in
Yeah.
Ireland.
Exactly. Well, I noticed when I had Jason Bourne on the podcast
Yeah,
last week, he
yeah,
does exactly the same thing, the sea swimming.
right.
And I was kind of laughing at him, and then I was talking to him afterwards, and I was saying, because my wife does, or she did do a bit of sea swimming kind of beside where we are, and he's not too far away. And I was like, well, I must say, I'll root out the wetsuit and I'll come and join you. And he was like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. But I didn't
Yeah.
go. It was 5:30 in the morning, and I didn't go. And I'm like, I'm not too early. But then I saw pictures on Instagram, and none of them had wetsuits on. I was like, what?
No,
I was like, because you don't either. I was like, these
no.
are absolute madness.
Well, he must be. He must be very seasoned now. He knows to be going at 5:30 in the morning. I haven't actually done that yet, but I definitely will, because I like, and that's what, and I'd encourage you to do it as well, Keith, because you don't have to be a good swimmer. It's about
Yeah.
just getting in the water.
Yeah. Well, the
And
thing is I am actually quite a good swimmer.
oh right.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, used to be a qualified lifeguard. So of all the things I should be
You have
doing,
no
I have
excuse.
no excuse, no excuse. Because I saw Jason on Instagram yesterday. He was going for a run, and he was
Yeah.
saying that he said, like, just go do it. Like, he was dying after it, but he no procrastination about it. Just go do it. And I kind of left a message saying, that I've been putting it off for months. He said, just do it now. Just do it right now. And you're dead right. Just do it. Just no messing. Because people with anxiety,
Right.
for me anyway, people with anxiety are such procrastinators that they put everything off. And you'll never end up doing it. But the fact that for you had the pandemics, hit, and you didn't stay just sitting at home. You got out and you started going for your walks. So I used to see every single day you're on social media. Every single day you're out going for walks, and now you're out swimming.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You're not sitting around waiting for something to happen. It's brilliant. I have to say, it's really, really good.
Oh, thanks so much. But it's definitely, like, when you also see as well the amount of people that are doing this. Like I mean, I think it's taken sometimes for everybody in the world to slow down and actually be still and stop. And we're appreciating things like being back in nature, hearing the birds singing, the sunrise, all of these things. And I definitely, I know for me anyway, like in
Mm.
life, the pace of life was so different to the way it is now. And I much prefer the way it is now. And I definitely think, like, I think you should, if you're a lifeguard, oh Keith, there's no excuse, you've got to get into the water. But it's also, it's just like, you won't regret it. Like, it does something to your system that you just are like shocked for a minute or two. And it's just really great for your head, for your body, for everything.
Mm.
And there's also, down, you can see as well all over social media that there's anywhere that there's a beach going, and it doesn't even have to be sunny. There's people in swimming, much more, I think, than ever
Yeah.
was before.
Yeah.
We live on this great island that is surrounded by water, and we're never too far from the ocean. If you need to get there, we're never too far from a mountain if you need to climb, or a forest if you want to go and look in. And I think there's lots of people are sort of checking in with themselves a bit more. Like, the
Mm.
relationship you have with yourself is so important, but also understand being in tune with yourself. And that takes time to do. And especially if you are someone who is a worrier or
Mm.
procrastinator, and you're worrying about everything, like, trying to get still is actually something that I think really works for an anxious mind. Especially as well, there's things where you can try and like stop in the tracks, like, so like moving the body is really important. If you're feeling anxious, like, get
Mm.
out for that walk, go for a
Yeah.
brisk walk, and try and actually kind of get some of that like adrenaline out of you.
Yeah.
um Also as well, I think, for lots of people, like with their thoughts, like, the amount of friends and people I know that, over during the pandemic, and especially some of my friends in this sort of the startup world and entrepreneurial world, like, they're super stressed with different things that are going on, and
Mm.
the thoughts, they're going down different rabbit holes of the future, of the past, not being in the present. And I think that, it is important to sort of just, before the thought
Mm.
turns into a feeling, that it's just thought.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
not a premonition. It's not, it's a thought that's going to come into the head. Sit with that as long as you want, let it out. And when you start being able to sort of even view your thoughts as something separate, um, you're kind of onto a winner. And there's loads of different things that can help anxiety. And like that, everybody is different. But, other tips as well, like, I mean, like journaling. Like, and you
Yeah.
remember this, I hate writing. Like, it's just not my strength. I really admire anyone who is able to, like, they're able to write so beautifully. And I really appreciate literature, but
Mm.
it's not something, when I'm trying to do something, I'm like, oh, and I just, and I'd happily sit beside someone and go, right, we say it like this, or we structure it like this, you
Yeah.
know. So, but when it comes to journaling, oh, you'd never think I couldn't write then.
Mm.
I'd be like, writing away. And like, so sometimes, reflective writing is also something that, if you're like, right, what do I need to do for myself in this moment? It's only a moment. And I was reading, I watched a webinar with Eckhart Tolle, the author of like The Power of Now. And I remember there's something that he said that really resonated with me, and it was to sort of change your mind instantly. So when you're feeling a bit anxious, to actually try and just like say to yourself, I'm okay with being anxious in this moment.
Yeah.
This moment isn't going to hurt me,
Yep.
because I'm actually making peace with this moment.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, that's actually brilliant. And it's sort of like, if you even assess, like, sort of, if my anxiety is like 8 or something, and you start kind of saying that, and then you're going for the walk, and then by the end of it, you're like, oh, now it's at 3. Or,
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
obviously people are different, but
Yeah.
stuff like that, sort of just working on the mindset is really important for being able to get through like difficult times in your life.
Yeah, yeah. And would you find that maybe a lot of people, or maybe a lot of entrepreneurs, probably don't take enough time for themselves? I suppose when you're setting up a business and you've got, like, as you had, you're going, being pulled all over the place. I suppose it can be hard, and it's hard to switch off.
Yeah, it's because it's kind of matching like sort of the levels of excitement and
Yeah.
the joy that happens, and all of the good things that happens. But there is a price to pay. And like, when you're very overworked and you have like different things going on all the time, I do think it's something that hadn't seen as much, which was the sort of, the wellness, making wellness and making your mental health and making your self-care as much as a priority as you're making your investment deals, as well. Like, you
Yeah.
need to mind
Good
yourself,
point.
you need to be able to prepare, and you need to look after the head. and everything will follow as well. But I don't. I mean, I've seen it all. Like I've seen different entrepreneurs become like very, very stressed out with different things that are happening, because a lot of the time as well, when you start a business, and like it's all new to you, so starting businesses with people, and different founders, and sometimes founders don't get on, and like I've seen it all with different companies, and like there's things then become like that you never had to deal with before. And you don't have the experience of what this is. So now you're dealing with something in a kind of a legal entity structure that you're like, how, and so there, and relationships and managing all of these things happen. And so, and then there's like all of this exciting stuff as well. But I just don't think, I think there's lots of mentors, and there's lots of people out there that will support you on your business. But I don't see a lot, much more now since the pandemic, but I don't see a lot of sort of that sort of therapy or coaching aspect as much in the entrepreneur community, which is actually really checking in with yourself.
Yeah.
And knowing that it's really normal to feel what you're going through, because actually maybe you've never done this before, and this is a big deal, and it's not that you have to be able to like take some time for yourself to be the best version that you can be in your company and in your personal life as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's very true, actually. And how are you now? I mean, you have your swimming and your walking, but obviously, you still got things going on. How are you at the moment?
So like, yeah, I'm getting there. There's always things, ups and downs, but at the moment I'm, looking after my mental health. I'm swimming, I'm walking, I'm eating nutritious food, trying to. It's been a lot of takeaways there for the past.
Yeah, it's hard.
It is hard.
It's
It's so hard. It's definitely something like I always struggle with as well, like is the food. But when I think about when I am actually eating nutritious food and I'm going for a walk, and even just getting up, like people, all these things are out there, but it's when you start actually doing them, getting up early, getting sleep.
Yeah.
I am such a night owl. Like I love staying up late. Since I was a child, it's just in me. I love staying up late. But then I really struggled to get up in the morning. I could never ever get up in the morning, even when I was younger. But like that, trying to break those habits and going to bed early and sticking with the plan, getting up earlier, having a morning coffee or doing a walk or something before you start your day.
Routine is very important.
Yeah, I mean, do you ever do any like affirmations, or do you ever do any of like gratitude journal or anything like that?
Well, not really. Well, I suppose I did that's how the endless spiral kind of started, was by me just kind of writing a few blogs for myself. And I'm exactly the same as you. I'm not a writer. I mean, I kind of a content creator, but I'm not a writer. So, but look, I say that to everyone who approaches me about putting a blog on the website. You don't have to be a writer. You're putting your stories and your experiences down on a page or screen or whatever way you're doing it. You don't have to be a writer. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, so no, I'm not. I wouldn't be. I don't write a journal every day, but when I had a bit of a wobble a few weeks ago, and I wrote a blog and I put it up on the website. So when I feel I need to do it, I will.
Yeah.
And then that kind of is, as everyone has put a blog up has said to me anyway, it's very therapeutic and it's very cathartic, just kind of putting your thoughts down. And it's kind of like you're just getting your thoughts out of your head and putting them down onto a page or screen or whatever you're doing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, no. So to answer your question, no, I don't do it all the time, but when I feel I need to do it, I do. But like as you said, everyone's different, and not everything works for everybody.
Yeah.
I find mindfulness difficult. My mind wanders. I find that just even like the meditation, I find that very difficult.
Yeah.
I find it very difficult to concentrate enough to do it. I just don't feel it's beneficial to me as much as maybe it is to somebody else, But yeah.
I know, but that's amazing though that you're able to, bring yourself to, put a blog out. And I think there is, I know we've probably watched this talk with Brene Brown, but like, like that power and vulnerability as well. And and that's why I think like, fair play to you for doing a podcast like this, because I just think that, it helps one person go, actually, that's what I went through as well. Then that's amazing. But it's finding, I totally resonate with finding what works for you. Because for like, I people used to say like, read the law, read The Secret, read the Law of Attraction, like all these things. And I really like all of them, but I know for other people, they're like, oh, that wouldn't work for me.
Yeah.
Now I do believe in it. I do think those things, I think that, being in like sort of good form, and like being raising your vibration, and you attract all these good things to you. And that does happen. But what I used to kind of question, but what happens if you're not in good form? And what happens? How do I get there? And that's the piece. It's like, because when you're in good form and you're bouncing around the place and you're actually, everything's going all right in your life, and you feel like, I'm actually all right, I'm going to take stock of this, and that's great. But it's just that bit before. So it's when it's that bit before, if you're feeling like low or you're feeling a bit grey, and it's like, what do I need to do here? I think even the first piece is acknowledging that you're there. And acknowledging that, maybe I'm not doing very well today, or maybe I'm not doing the best. And you just need to manage things in like that day, just that size of the day. That's all.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of going, okay, well, what can I do today to help myself? Am I waiting for someone to just rock in now and just sort it all out for me? What can I do? And one of the things that, like, especially sort of around the business piece, but it really worked for me, was that I felt that at times I probably wasn't dealing with stuff because I'd rather do something else. Now, this also plays into other parts of my life, sometimes that procrastination piece as well.
Yeah.
But I wasn't dealing with the things I needed to deal with. Therefore, I wasn't healing. So I think that when you deal with things that are actually stressing you out or bothering you, can be work situation, might be your own stuff, might be relationships. When you start to deal with them, then you can actually start to heal from them.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think that that's very important for us all.
Yeah.
And it can be applied to different scenarios.
Yeah.
But it's really, it's kind of getting, it's feeling like it's you have to almost feel a certain way to sort of realize, okay, now is my time that I actually need to, like, I need to do something, or I need to deal with this piece.
Yeah, 100%. And later on, when we finish this podcast, you'll put all that on the blog and send it to me, and I'll pop it up on the website, won't you?
Yeah. You have to write it.
Yeah. Well, you're probably just going to send me a few voice notes anyway. I'll transcribe it for you.
That's what I'll do. Paragraph 1.
Paragraph 1. Yeah, I'll just transcribe it for you. So I think maybe we'll wrap this up fairly soon. So, as I always do, coming towards the end of the podcast, I usually let the guests have the final word, and I usually ask them, is there any kind of inspirational quote or words or phrases or anything that they want to share with other people that might help them along the way? Do you have anything that you want to share, Louise?
Probably, I was thinking about this. I think for me, I suppose, like, I feel like I'm lucky that, like, I think I know what works for me, and I know how to deal with pain. Is a big word, but I know how to deal with things. And for me, that's definitely talking about it. And I know that might sound easy, but it's actually, I realize it's a combination of things, but underpinned by figuring out what works for you. So I figured out that going for a walk, talking to my friends, eating good food, journaling, and therapy. Like therapy, even if it's every 2 or 3 weeks or something like that, that check-in with yourself, that's what works for me. And everybody is different, but I suppose my encouragement would be that if you're feeling a certain way, it's like, find out what works for you and try everything. For some person, it might be that run, or it might be the swim. Sorry, the swim I'll add to the list as well. But and that, it's different for everybody. But to just not be afraid, actually, to find out what works for you. Everybody is not as talkative as me when it comes to this kind of stuff, and I really appreciate that. But maybe you and all of your friends are not your outlet for everything that's going on. So, and that's okay too. So I think it's just finding out what works for you, to be able to give you that sense of relief, and be able to shift that anxiety or whatever it might be just out of you, and it's gone. And all of the things we've talked about, like journaling or writing down, things that you're grateful for, or, doing your exercise, whatever it is, all of those things, one might be more prominent for somebody else, or it might be, as we said at the start, it might be having a bubble bath and just listening to music, or it's different for everybody, but to explore for your life actually what works for you, to be able to, make peace with certain things and move forward.
Brilliant. Really, really good. Thanks, Louise, for coming on today. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Very welcome. Guys, I'll leave that there. We'll be back again very soon with another episode of the Endless Spiral podcast, and I'll talk to you all again soon. Bye for now.